Hello. As promised, I am here to talk to you about some mental health topics. And the one that I want to start with is postpartum depression. I've had two pregnancies and two children, only one of which did I have postpartum, and that was after my very first child, my son Liam. Um, I've written an article on it that I put on my Ko-fi site, and I can put a link in the comments to that if you want to actually go back and read the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of look at the notes as I go. But I was 25 when I had my first child, so it wasn't like I was a teenage mom or a vulnerable type person. I wasn't living in squalor or anything like that. Me and my husband, we had built our first home. We'd been married for about 7 years. I was mature. I was an adult. So it wasn't really a situational thing. People say that it's just the stress of having a new baby, but it's not. Something completely different happens in a woman's body when she's going through postpartum depression, and that's what I want to talk about. This is not something a woman can control. This is not something that you can just say, get over it, feel better. You should just be grateful you have your baby. There is enough guilt in a woman who's suffering from postpartum when she has her baby that she really doesn't need to hear those things. So try to be more sensitive. I had my son, and within the previous month and a half, I had actually lost two close family members. My grandmother had passed away, and then my father in law. I'm not going to say that that didn't play a part in how I felt, but my postpartum lasted for a year. Um, and until the year was over and I started getting a little better, because it wasn't over after a year, but I started getting better after a year. And it was at that point that I realized how sick I had been, how I was not myself. My doctor did know what was going on. She did prescribe me medication, which I refused to take because I was nursing. I was afraid to take pills. It was a bit of an irrational fear, but it was a real fear. It was how I felt. Um, and that's the important thing too, is when somebody is going through something, don't minimize their feelings. Don't make it out like, oh, it's just in your head. It's just what you're going through and it's all going to be fine. In your head, when you're having depression, no matter what the cause is, it is serious. I do consider postpartum depression to be a temporary form of mental illness. You're not yourself, you are sick. And just like your body can get sick, if you have, something long term and chronic like arthritis or, God forbid, cancer, something like that, then maybe that's something that you're going to deal with for a long period of time. And sometimes your illness is short. It might be the flu, it might be COVID, it might be whatever. And so mental illness is the same way. Sometimes we go through it for a time. Sometimes, especially with treatment, we get better. Sometimes it's something you have to manage your entire life. Fortunately, postpartum is not something that lasts a woman's entire life. There are women who struggle with it for more than just a little while. Most women who suffer with what they call the baby blues, that's over with within a few weeks. If a woman is still suffering after her 6-week checkup, she needs some help. She needs some further support. She may need medication. This is not something that you can just make go away. Uh, Sometimes sleep deprivation is a factor. It's always a factor in mental health to be sleep deprived. But if a woman feels like she's getting enough rest and she's still crying during the day, if she can't handle her anxious feelings, I had a lot of anxiety about thinking that, seeing my baby look so vulnerable. Anybody could hurt him and there was nothing he could do about it because he's just a baby and I had to protect him. I had a lot of anxious feelings, a lot of irrational anxious feelings that I knew were irrational, but it doesn't change the fact that it upset me. Um, During my pregnancy, there was really no sign that I was going to have postpartum. This is not something that I could see coming. Here's my cat. Um, Hi, Gunpowder. I was actually really happy when I was pregnant with Liam. I had what they call happy hormones. Basically, nothing brought me down. I was cheerful all the time. I looked good. I felt good. I felt like I was cute when I was pregnant. I didn't get acne. I didn't have the morning sickness. I mean, I had a great pregnancy, but it just came back on me later with the postpartum. Um, Breastfeeding was an issue too. I chose to nurse, and I had another issue of when I had my baby, the lactation nurse's father had died. She was out. Our hospital only had the one. So it was actually a few days after I left the hospital before I got a professional lactation nurse to come out to my house and to help me. And by that time, I was in kind of bad shape. So I was in a lot of pain. Nursing was a big deal. It hurt. I didn't want to give up. And I felt very much like, I wouldn't say like a bad mom, But like someone who wasn't a natural at it, somebody who wasn't just picking it up and getting it, I didn't feel like any of my maternal instincts were kicking in. And it was all just because of the anxious feelings that I had, the depression that I had. Um, I cried a lot. I cried. Um, but even after that passed, because I didn't cry for a year, it just stuck with me. Like my husband said, he could tell differences. I was withdrawn. With emotional withdrawal is a sign of depression, okay? Just because you don't walk around crying and saying how sad you are, that doesn't mean you're not depressed. Um, it hurt my bond with my baby. It hurt my bond with my husband. It hurt me. And it was something that I actually felt guilt for. See, that's the thing, is anything that happens to you that you feel like has impacted your baby, you're going to have guilt for. I felt guilty because the nursing wasn't going as planned. I felt guilty because he picked up on my every emotion. So when I was emotional, he was emotional. If I cried, he cried. Then I felt guilty. Maybe that's part of the reason I was so withdrawn, is because I felt like my emotions were messing up my baby. And I didn't have any way to deal with that on my own. Um, it impacted me to the point that I almost didn't have another child. I was terrified of postpartum depression. Just the thought of going through that again, I couldn't face it. But I loved my son so much, and he brought me so much joy and happiness. And I never intended to just have an only child. When he was 5 is when I had another baby. Okay, I didn't really mean to spread it out that far, but that's what I could handle. That's what I did. So he was in kindergarten, and he got a new little sister. And you would think I would have had it again. I kept having people tell me, oh, if you have postpartum, your middle child's your worst. Your second child is always the worst. People don't say that to women. We don't need to hear it, okay? It's not true. It's just a myth. I did not have any postpartum with my daughter. I got the morning sickness, okay? But it was a good trade. I had like 24/7 nausea for a month. I could barely eat anything. Nothing helped. I didn't actually vomit. I just felt nauseous all the time. That's not fun. It was better than postpartum. It was a good trade, okay? Your emotional health is so much more important. Your mental health is so much more important than your physical health, as long as you're not actually dying, because it is harder on you. And it can become a physical thing. You can have physical symptoms to your emotional problems, whether it's chest pains, chronic stomach aches, chronic headaches. Um, just there are so many things. Some people grind their teeth and it impacts their dental health. You really need your mental and emotional health and stability. Um, when I had my little girl Moira, she was underweight. She did wind up having some problems in the very, very beginning. She had, let me see what they called it. They called it placental growth retardation. Her placenta was not as big as it was supposed to be. It had stopped developing, and she'd started losing weight inside of me because she was not getting the nutrition that she needed. And basically, she was going to starve to death in my stomach, and they didn't know. Okay? Nobody caught it. But I kept feeling like something was wrong. I had already kind of argued with them the whole pregnancy about how I felt like I was a month further along than they were saying. They always say, oh, when did you have your last menstrual cycle? And I'm like, well, technically I spotted, but I think I was already pregnant. They're like, no, 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 no. So we kind of argued back and forth on when I was due. If they had let me go to my due date before taking her, she'd have died. Okay? You have to listen to your gut. Fortunately, God intervened. I wound up leaking some amniotic fluid, and they said, oh, we don't want to have a dry birth, so let's go ahead and take her. And the look on my doctor's face when my daughter came out, my husband said she was just in shock. I was a little bit out of it because they had OD'd me on epidural, and then they had to flush it out, so then I got to go natural. So I wasn't paying that much attention to her face. But she was 5 pounds, 7 ounces. Considering my son, who was my firstborn, was 8 pounds, 1 ounce, I was expecting a chunky baby, and I got a little bitty mini baby. We had to go buy her some preemie diapers and preemie clothes because we weren't prepared for that size. They did say that she could possibly have some very serious academic issues, some physical issues, some of them possibly very serious. She doesn't, okay? She doesn't. She is top of her class. She is in the seventh grade now. She's actually joined the football team at middle school. She is healthy. Okay, so don't let people and their negative comments, no matter how educated, bring you down. Okay, don't lose hope. Don't think everything's just going to be bad because in my case, I prayed for her all the time. When I was pregnant, I prayed. When she was a baby, I prayed. Okay, and that's what got me through. That's what got her through. And I have two beautiful children. My son is going to be a Marine in the fall. That's what he says. He's 18 and he's going to graduate high school soon. And like I said, my daughter, she's healthy and fit. She's super smart. She shares my love of reading. But you know, when I was going through my postpartum, you can't see the future, okay? I know because I got through it that everything is okay. I wish I could go back and tell the me that I was then, the mom that I was then, it's going to be okay. Just get through it. You know, I wish I could go back and tell myself, just take the medicine. You know, I mean, they test that stuff to make sure it's safe to take when you're nursing. I wouldn't listen because I was just afraid. And it's fine to be scared. You have to give women outside support. You know, they need other people to step in and see the signs. Okay, so if you see a woman who's had a baby and she's struggling, if she doesn't want visitors, if she's withdrawn, if she seems angry or sad, anything, if it lasts more than just the typical baby blues time, which is going to be days or maybe weeks, but not longer than your 6 week checkup, okay? Then somebody just needs to step in and have that discussion with her. And please do it in a non judgmental way. It is so easy to make a woman in that situation feel like she is inadequate. Just talk to her about how other women have had postpartum and these can be the signs and see if she recognizes it in herself. There's just not a lot of education out there about it. And honestly, when I had it, I'd only ever known one other person in my life that had had it. And the only other references I ever heard were these women in the news media who have killed their kids and blamed postpartum. And so I'm sitting here thinking, no, that's not me. I would never hurt my child. Of course not. And I wouldn't have. But that's not all it is. When you have postpartum, it doesn't mean you're going to hurt your baby. It doesn't mean you're a bad mom. It doesn't mean you're not trustworthy. So reach out to these women and help them to help themselves, and because you're also going to be helping that baby because the whole family is impacted by postpartum depression. Thanks, guys.